This week, what we're going to talk about is the requirement for digital reporting, which is the key aspect of this particular initiative. So digital reporting is the thing that's going to distinguish this initiative from maybe the way in which you already file your tax return. And we'll talk about what is digital reporting exactly and how best can you find a solution that will work for your small business, your freelance business, to help you report digitally to HMRC. So we are My Tax Advisor. We're an online tax advisory service, and we're particularly interested in supporting small businesses and freelancers who don't have their own accountant. So they don't have somebody they can ring up or send a quick email to say, what do I do about this? We cover all the different taxes. We're not limited to income tax particularly, but obviously at the moment we're really interested in income tax because it's going to have such a big impact on freelancers when all of this comes into force. So digital reporting. What exactly is digital reporting? In a way, the easiest way to try and define it is to tell you what it's not. So at the moment, many of you probably report your income and expenses annually on a self-assessment tax return. You pull all your information together in whatever way, might be pen and paper, might be spreadsheet, might be an app on your phone or your iPad or your tablet. And then you get your numbers organized and you put them into your annual self-assessment tax return. Obviously, that's a digital process because then you're submitting that tax return online. The key difference between what you're doing there and what you're going to be doing with Making Tax Digital is, and how they're describing a digital reporting mechanism, is that it's not just the online process that becomes digital. The numbers that are populating the return itself have to be a digital transaction. So they have to be pulled from some sort of digital link. And that's really what we're looking at. So it won't be sufficient to just type numbers into an online portal, your HMRC self-assessment portal, or maybe you use a particular tax return software. That in itself will no longer be sufficient. There'll need to be something that populates those boxes of the tax return. And it's the product that you use to populate the boxes is the digital reporting software that you need to have a think about. It seems to me that in terms of digital reporting, there are three fundamental ways in which you could do that quarterly to HMRC. The most obvious and the one that's getting a lot of publicity at the moment are the big software houses. So I'm thinking of people like Xero, QuickBooks, Free Agent, Sage. They're big firms out there. They've been offering accounting software at different levels of complexity for different types of businesses for many, many years now. And they're all geared up to help support freelancers and landlords with Making Tax Digital for income tax. They're all, for the most part, they're all ready to go. There is a list on the HMRC website of those software providers which are already approved and up and running and what they offer. Some of them will offer both sole trader reporting, which is you as a small business and a freelancer, as well as landlord reporting. So for those of you who have maybe a buy-to-let flat as well as a small business, you have two different sets of reporting requirements. Some of the software options out there will allow you to tackle both within the same bit of software, and that's something you want to have a look at when they list what they offer, is whether they will do both or not, because not all of them do. For today, I'm going to focus much more on the small business sole trader side of things and the requirements that you would have there. But do keep in mind that you might want to look at both. There are particular issues around the landlord stuff, which we might come back and tackle later, but it's outside of the scope of what we're going to talk about today. So those are the big players, if you like, the big guys, and they're already out there up and running. When you're having a look at their websites, check their pricing fairly carefully. They, for the most part, operate in a fairly similar way. They will nearly all discount their product upfront for anything up to maybe 6 months. What you want to look at is what are you committing to in the longer term. In my experience, there's not a huge difference in terms of the pricing between them and the functionality that they offer. So I would say you're getting a broadly similar product across the board. And it really depends, probably for you, on which interface feels most familiar and comfortable, and which one you think you're going to work with, which one has a tone in its software that suits you, and so on. Obviously, if you do have an accountant, then you want to have a chat with them and ask them if there's a particular bit that they're already a certified provider of, something that they're already familiar with, so that you can go ahead and use what they're using. That will make your life much easier, because they would be a partner with that particular bit of software, and they'll be able to support you much more easily. So I was talking to one particular provider, a crowd called Coconut, who I really like as a very simple, straightforward option for freelancers. I think it's a nice, easy interface for everybody. It does do a bank feed option, but it also allows you to invoice. I think it covers a lot of the basics, but manages to do it in a fairly straightforward way. I'm not aligned to them in any way. I just am saying that I like it. So that's option one, the kind of mainstream accounting software. Option two, I would say, is the smaller, maybe what is best defined as an income and expense app kind of software. The difference between that type of software and the one we've just been talking about is that the income and expense app softwares don't generally offer a link to your bank account. So before we start to get in a muddle, I will talk about each of these things in a bit more detail in a moment. I'm just going to give you an introduction first. So you've got your big guys, then you've got your income and expense app type of software, which is less contingent on linking everything up to a bank account. So it's much more to do with you entering your income and your expenses as you go along. And there'll be reasons for some of you why that's a much better solution. But I like Zero Go for the income and expenses, really, really simple option. But do watch that one, because that's one where you start to pull in bank feeds and invoicing, the prices go up and become much closer aligned to their regular packages. But if you just want to use it as a sort of app to jot down the income and expenses that you're incurring as you go along through your business, I really like it. I think it's nice and simple. I know it's free until March. They've committed to that. And then after that, there are some fees involved. But I would say take a look at that one as well as your option two recommendation. The third option is spreadsheets, which chances are most of you are using to some degree already. And there is absolutely no need to panic and rush into committing to one particular bit of accounting software or another, because it is it's an absolute certainty that there will be an option to continue to use spreadsheets to report digitally each quarter to HMRC. What you will have to use, though, if you decide to go ahead and carry on with using spreadsheets, is there are two things to think about. One is that you will have to have some kind of what's known as bridging software, which will link your existing spreadsheet to the HMRC portal that will allow you to submit your quarterly MTD return. So there's going to be new software there no matter what you do. There's really no way to get away from that. But it will let you continue to collate everything in the way that you're used to. The other thing that, of course, you need to keep in mind is that you might have a spreadsheet that pulls in information from different sources, maybe a credit card, as well as a bank account, or even multiple bank accounts. That will all have to be streamlined down to one particular source of information, which will then feed into the bridging software and on into the HMRC portal. So those are the three fundamental types of digital interface, I would say, that are available to you. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. And I want to just go back now and dig in a little bit more to what each of them will offer. So option one, the big players, let's call it. I like that for those of you who are going to want to connect a bank account. It talks to your bank account, pulls in the transactions, and from there you can analyze everything into an income and expense category that makes sense for you. Ultimately, those categories are going to match the existing categories on your self-employment pages. So they'll be very similar. So what you'll be looking for is to find something where those categories are familiar to you and you can use the same sort of ones. What's really nice about the bank feed options is that it massively reduces errors, because at the end of the day, you're going to look to see, does the statement in your software match the statement in your real live bank account? And if it does, you know you've done more or less the right thing, because everything matches up. The downside of these bank feed options is that if you have transactions that are going through multiple accounts, so let's say you have a business bank account, but also a personal account that has work stuff going through it, and then maybe a credit card, you might even have some cash transactions. That's 4 different lines of information that all have to get pulled in. And sometimes you'll have to wade through quite a lot of unimportant stuff to nail down the information that you do then want to pull together for your quarterly return. So that's the downside, but the upside, I would say, is that it really reduces errors. The middle option, which is what I'm going to call the income and expense app option, is great for those of you who maybe at the moment use a pen and a paper or a spreadsheet to pull in that income and expense information from lots of different sources. So as I say, you're one of those businesses or freelancers for whom some people pay into one account, some people pay into another, you have a subscription coming out of a third, and you go off and do meetings and you pay for things with cash in connection with that. So for those type of businesses, something that allows you to just enter those transactions yourself, I think is the easiest option. They're not linked to a bank feed, but it allows you to pick and choose from each of your different sources what it is you want to enter into on your digital report and send up to HMRC. So I really like that option when you've got transactions coming across lots of different sources. And then we talked briefly already about spreadsheets. I like that for those of you who are familiar with that way of working, want to keep that way of working, don't want to get overly complicated too quickly. The downside is that you will have to find a bit of bridging software to make it talk to your HMRC portal. Please do send me some comments or additional questions. If there's software that you really like and you want to share with your fellow freelancers, then please do that, because it would be really useful to them.